Hey, so we're live. Larry Bailey, Art Davis, Mortgage Workflow Partners. This is the Encompass 23.2 release notes review party. And a couple of things. First of all, this is the very first time that I'm going live on this kind of platform. So if you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn, if we get something wrong, I'll beg for your forgiveness. Hopefully we get it right. The important thing is we're here today to talk about these release notes. The reason why I started doing these videos and audio recordings some time ago is because I hate reading. Although it's one of the things that you have to do, obviously, as an Encompass admin. And if somebody could just kind of read things through, I can listen and watch or play it back, that kind of a thing. So that's what this is all about. If you are if you are here at the live party here, there is a way you can chat. So feel free to go ahead and chat and add anything, and we'll see how it goes. At the very least, the whole point is just to read these release notes. Before we get jumping in, I do want to bring over something that everybody should know. If you don't, these release notes are always public, which is why I don't mind doing these public sessions. You can get to it on help.icemortgagetechnology.com/documentation/encompass. And eventually you'll come into, in the release notes. You can see right now the expected release date, and these can always change, but it is June 10th. If you're using Banker, click this link. If you're using Broker, click that link. And this will bring you over into here. ICE has been doing some really great work on breaking down the PDF into what's in this release. So if you like the way that this is laid out versus PDF, I fully encourage you to engage in that. And then also it kind of gives you these quick links down here, which is pretty cool. So thank you, ICE, for doing all this great work. I'm going to pop this over to the PDF because this is how I do it. And for those that have heard me go through this before, Art, I'm sure you're trying to, oh, wow, our guest room is full. We maxed out our guest room. Looks like we have to adjust those settings for the next recording. So hopefully you can watch us over on Facebook or LinkedIn or YouTube. I'm sure we'll be getting some email about that, Art. So
if you want to forward that to me, I can help with that communication.
Well, so we'll probably get some emails maybe about that. Anyway, first thing I like to do is always go to the end. It's like reading the end of the book first. Art, you ever do this where you go look at the change log first?
I don't, and I should have, because some of my concerns, or not concerns rather, but observations off the top were then answered down below in the Attention Encompass Administrator section that they add.
Yeah.
That's a good tip. I should do that.
Yeah, so I always go and say, hey, what's changed since last version? Because again, you're if you think nothing changed, you never know. You never know. So always look in here. Looks like the last time this document was modified was May 5th. Today's May 11th, so we should be good to go. In the release notes, a big thing I like to do is break it down into what's happening. So we've got some standard stuff in terms of basic updates, things to think about and keep track of. You've got feature enhancements that are coming out. We'll go through those. And then separately, we've got, if we get down here, we've got a lot of feature enhancements. And we got fixed issues. So we always like to track on what's going on with fixed issues. First thing we'll go into is our basic release notes. Guys, this is a major, right? So unless you have some type of special permission from ICE, you're going to get this released to you. Even if you've got your version manager set to manual, unless you do like some kind of special opt-out with ICE ahead of time, you're going to get this pushed out to your production. And the important part is that when you, if you do want to opt out, keep in mind that it's pretty tenuous. You have to have a really specific use case because there's so much that is involved with making sure that your Encompass is running properly. So as a call out here, again, we're going to be going through all of these notes as far as what's in the release. What's really important is if you're using SDK, so administrators, if you're doing Anything inside of Encompass from a technology perspective, or you've got plugins that you've either created yourself or you're purchased from a third party, now would be the time to check with those resources to making sure that they are prepared for this 23.2 update. Again, this could be an internal resource, something that you created perhaps, or something you bought from somebody else. But make sure, again, if you're still using the SDK platform, that you're updating your SDK servers to the 23.2 release, to making sure that your client side is going to work with your server side, which is going to work with your software that's running through SDK. Obviously, really, really important. If you need those files, the SDK updates, those kinds of things, you'll find it here on page 11 out of 70. So something to check out. All right, you feel like reminding people also about system requirements. How much RAM do you have in your machine, Arthur?
Right now, only
Yeah.
16, awaiting a delivery tomorrow. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so here's the thing. I talk about making sure that your system requirements are meeting spec. If you're working on anything less than 16, really 12 is the minimum dedicated to the 12 gigs is the minimum dedicated per the system specs. 16 is the absolute minimum. I'm always recommending at least 32, and that's if you're on a laptop, because that's pretty expensive on a laptop. Usually $1,000 or $1,100 for a machine that has 32 gigs soldered into that. If you get a laptop that can expand the crap out of it, and if you're working on a desktop, get at least 64 gigs of RAM. It's so friggin' cheap. Art, what did it cost you? Do you remember?
Oh, it's only $25 for what I got.
For
I
what'd you get, an
used
extra
a
16
I
gigs?
used a scanner tool and learned that my motherboard could support up to 4 slots at 8 each. So I max out at
Oh, cool.
32 on this one for now. Yeah.
All right, that'll work.
Yeah. So my takeaway is to better minimize my 40 Google Chrome tabs, perhaps. Work with my 32 gig for now, and then maybe upgrade. You know how fast motherboards and things like that can get old.
Love it.
So there's a little management between the two, but I'm excited to get my 32 in tomorrow.
Okay. If you're listening, if you know somebody, because right now there's a bunch of people trying to join the room, and that was my fault because I should have given them the link over on LinkedIn. So, Art, maybe if you want to check over on LinkedIn in the company post to make sure we're actually streaming live, that's probably not a bad idea. If you don't mind doing that while we're here.
Yeah, I'd be glad to.
So listen, a couple of things in here that are outside feature enhancements. This is talking about the QN and HOIPA threshold adjustments. So one of the things I like to draw out here is the fact that Encompass settings are always updating. So recently I heard that somebody went through an educational platform that I helped create some time ago, and they're still using my recordings from 3 years ago. And I just kind of shake my head because this is an example. Oh, Ann, thanks. You're on LinkedIn. It sounds fine. And you rock. Thank you. This is a perfect example of why you can't participate in old recordings. It's like if you found my recordings from 2012, where I'm talking about version 8, when I worked at Ellie Mae at the time, could it still be applicable? Maybe, because personas, the idea of a persona hasn't changed, but obviously everything else in them has. So this is one of those examples. You're getting a new setting within the tables and fees for federal threshold adjustments. So if you're in here, you're going to get a pop-up message. Check with your company on if you need to address federal threshold adjustments and keep them synchronized for your QM and for your high cost for your HOIPA. That's the Home Equity Protection Act, in case you need to know that. So that's new, like that's brand new. I don't even know much about it, but it sounds important. Art, do you know anything about this, federal thresholds?
Yeah, enough to be dangerous.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it important to keep updated?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the theme for this update I wrote down is timing and precision's everything. We get into precision on the index values, but on this one, this takes away for me the responsibility of trying to time the updates. And it looks as though, besides this one, and maybe you're going to the county loan limits, trying to manage those values, right? around the switchover of the year. So they have a visual here in the release notes. I think it shows 24 and 25, years
Yeah,
2024 and 25. And I look at that and I go, oh, that makes so much sense, right? Because it follows what I'm used to around, say, MI changes or something like that. So the
that's awesome.
logic's built in for me. Yeah.
Sweet.
A little
That
less to
sounds
do as an
good.
admin. Yeah, besides validate
Okay.
and
Love it.
test.
Looks like they're updating the decimal points for the SOFR index up to 5 now. So if you had any issues with rounding or with your investor deliveries, if they are disagreeing with the way Encompass is calculating, that index is changing to 5. So if you had any open cases for that, this should help.
This was my example, Larry, where I read this and I go, oh, wait a minute, when the precision changes, should I be worried about the values in there? And I'll tell you that ICE handled it very well, again, back to timing. So there's an admin setting, first of all, so you have the on-off switch at your control. And then once you turn it on, the values in field 688 that would be in there, if it was already populated with the 3 decimal spots, it's simply going to put 2 zeros in after that and not round that 3rd digit if you've already disclosed. Now, if you hit get index again, or if you have automation that calls on that get index procedure, then it can, of course, change it at that time. So there's still something to look at, perhaps around disclosed or not. But again, you have control of that setting and control of those values that existed already.
Is that something? So as we go through here, the whole point of Art and I doing this together is obviously different perspectives. So for anyone watching this, make sure that you're going through and you're checking, because if you're not used to hearing like what Art just said, I would want you to make sure that you reach out to your compliance folks or your other leadership within your company and say, how do we handle this? Because obviously it's something that we should be thinking about. But if you're not hearing these conversations, I'm reaching out to the team to say, hey, we need to, I need to understand what we should be doing. Fair enough. So there's a new, I'm going to go ahead and actually just do something really quick here. So there's a new admin tool setting to manage index rate decimals that we have to worry about. And this is one of those times that we have to go over to admin tools. So we don't talk about this a lot because usually we don't go into admin tools except for reporting database. But ICE is going to update the policies in the category list of the admin tools under Settings Manager. And now you have an ARM index precision option. And so if your company wants to change that to 5 decimals, go ahead and change that to 5. That's one of the very few times that you need to go in. The admin tool Settings Manager is when ICE does an update like this. So there's an illustration on screen.
Yep, there it is. Yep.
Yeah, right there. So that's pretty cool. That's a new
under policies, right?
Under policies. So there. So all my recordings for policies are now out of date, or now I got to redo them.
Yeah, my field 688 that's populated, it nicely is just going to throw the 2 zeros behind it for me and not round. So these are not note rates, right? So it wouldn't just be, say, a 5 on the end or something. This is actual index values. So the potential of rounding is greater, but ICE has handled that through control here.
Absolutely. So check it out. As Art said, 688 is the field ID. There are new fields being introduced. This is important. This is on page 19. Field 4898 and 3296. So again, if you've got logic or workflow built around this conversation, make sure that you look at fields 4898 and 3296. And you'll find here on the input on the release notes, page 19, where you can find those displays between the Reg Z till and the closing Reg Z input forms, as well as if you're using 2010, you can look on HUD1 forms. So here's just some illustrations of that. And there's an illustration of the new fields. It's a time, too, it's time, like you said, Art, it's timely because looks like adjustable rate mortgages are going to be with us for a little while longer, while fixed rates are still high.
Yep.
Right?
My other takeaway from this, so I know you mentioned the standard forms, and this, hits on a few different things, but certainly I've built this into many custom forms. So whether it's a, bar origination summary or a pop-up, to some type of customized ARM interaction, probably want to come back and throw in the date for visibility, at least as that one field. I like that one. That's going to be stamped automatically, the date of the index pulled.
Oh, you mean up in the?
Yeah, don't forget to update your customizations is my point there. You know,
Yep.
certainly they'll be updated on the standard forms, but this has been replicated into custom forms in numerous places.
Historical table update. So if you're doing HELOCs, again, another place to make sure you're addressing 5 decimals or 3 decimals. So just one more example. And this you'll find in the Encompass settings. So we're back in the native Encompass settings desktop. And there's a tables and fees, and there's a HELOC table tool. All right, we know about this. So now you've got the option to change your index precision. Very, very cool. Let's see what else we got in here. HELOC, updating APR to calc. So because we now have 5 decimal places possibly, we've got updates. So if you're doing HELOCs as a company, make sure you're paying attention to pages 22 through at least 24 to read these updates. Put that on your to-do list. We've got some updates now also with the DU and LPA calcs. Hopefully you understand what LTV, CLTV, and HCLTV are, so you can understand how these settings are updated, specifically to support DU or LPA affordable loans. Arthur, I feel like we were just talking about affordable loans.
Always.
So if you're doing affordables, that's important to make sure you understand to interface with DU or LP. We've got some, this is talking again about some updated logic. We're on page 25 now out of 70. Gangs, if you're doing Freddie Mac loans, you've got new fields. We've got the CASA SRN X217 or X218 or X219 to address these new fields that are needed to support LPA submissions. So if you're working with like an AUS tool, or you've built in some custom automation to help your users remember what they need to have filled in for LP, you might want to visit these 3 new fields, making sure that they are showing accurate information. Of course, this is anytime you're coming with a CLTV or an HCLTV, you have subordinate financing, right? So you want to make sure that that's shown correctly based upon your scenario. Let's see what else in here. It explains, oh, look at this. Even if you have it to 5, it rounds to 4. Looks like that's a Freddie limit. That's interesting, isn't it? Looks like, well, that's your LTV field, so maybe they just round to 4 instead of rounding to 3. I don't think I've ever seen an LTV round to 4. Have you, Arthur?
Mm-mm.
That's a new one. We've also got AUS data discrepancy. So for those that are not using these alerts, this alert is in the Freddie Mac workflow. So you can actually set up an alert to show you when the information is different in your AUS tracking tool versus your loan file. If you're not leveraging this alert, it's actually quite handy because it gives hopefully constructive notice to the right people in your loan workflow that the last time since in this case it's Freddie Mac, so last time LPA was run, you can actually see if the LTV and the CLTV in the loan file now match the AUS. So there's your alert. There's your new field. So if nobody's used to seeing those fields, people are going to be like, what the heck is that? So you'll want to make sure that you address that in your workflow and in your training. And here's just another screenshot. So that's page 28 of 70. Arthur, you used to do secondary, didn't you?
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been
So
about 10 years.
So for those that are doing secondary, trade update queue for loan trades and MBSs, if you're not using the trades tab, this is meaningless for you. We're on page 29. If you are doing any transactions, both buying or selling loans in multiples of more than 1, I would encourage you to check out the trades tab. If you're not quite sure what to do, you can give Mortgage Workflow Partners a call. We can absolutely help train you how to move into using trades tab to make your secondary teams way more effective and efficient in updating large numbers of loans all at once without having to go into each file. So there's just an update to the trades tab for how that trades tab is being used. I don't really, in terms of how this works, I would encourage you, if you're leveraging trades tab, that starts on page 29. I would go through and make sure that you understand how these things are working. I found, I don't know if you've ever worked on a lot of projects, Arthur, with secondary. but I found that how companies deploy the trades tab is unique from company to company. It's not like a standard tool because you can customize what you see and how you use it. Have you found that too?
I'll tell you, I'll be honest, I think I've probably been, I don't know, in over 100 environments, and I have not had a client use the trade tabs before,
Gotcha.
independent of, yeah, yeah. So I was surprised to see the update to it here, and it's
Yeah, it's
something that I'd,
actually
love to dive into more, but I've never been tasked or needed to direct someone there to it.
yeah. So it's interesting. Again, if it doesn't require to be a large lender, but basically or a large correspondent purchaser. But effectively, again, if you're delivering even to Fannie cash window, I know companies use Trades tab because they don't want to have their people have to go into the loan file. The Trades tab is effectively like an STK overlay, so you can have your secondary team working in your PPE, and then they update the Trades tab with the information, and then they can synchronize the information to all the loans that are in there. So if you have like a unified buy price, but you want to have a unique um, adjustment to each loan, you can do that kind of information from the trades tab without, again, having to go into every file or create special templates. It's really you don't have to be a big player, so to speak, to use a trade. You can actually go through here. So for those that are using it, pay attention. At least up to page 32 for trades. We've got the ability also to, within the product and pricing setting. So now we're back into Encompass secondary setup, product and pricing. So you can now, there's updates to the lock void section in here. So you can do a lock void for retail, and now you can do it also for wholesale. That's new. We did have before the voiding the lock for correspondence, best efforts only. So I think this is another nod to how Encompass is growing its support in non-retail channels, which is great. So if you've never used product and pricing in the trades tab to work with loans, this might seem not something you need to worry about. But if you're leveraging the secondary registration tool inside of Encompass, the ability to void a lock sometimes is required. It typically comes into play more often with a falling rate market because sometimes the business wants you to void a lock instead of repricing it. And that's done for worst case pricing, usually scenarios. But if you do have to do that, this is how you can go through these and update your ability to void for all of your channels, both retail, wholesale, and correspondent. So page 34 walks you through those steps basically, and there's a void lock illustration down there at the bottom of page 34. And you can enter comments, which I always highly suggest. All right, so we have some additional feature and form enhancements. There's a new authorized verification of income and authorized verification of assets fields added to the borrower summary origination. So we got a screenshot here. If you use VOI or VOA in your workflow, you've got new fields to make sure that are updated. Typically, what you're used to seeing up to date in Encompass is just an authorized, authorized to run credit. But now with the ongoing presence of verification integrations for employment, income, or assets, these are new fields. So you want to make sure that you've got a workflow in place with your borrowers to document the authorization to run that. I don't know if this is going to be later, but I would expect if you're using Consumer Connect to get their authorization to do this, I would expect that to flow through, but we'll have to wait and see.
I think I did see a reference to that somewhere in the notes.
Okay, cool.
Maybe
you read ahead? Wait, Arthur, you read ahead? You're not supposed to.
No, right up above. Right up above,
I
I swear. It's your second to last sentence. There's data entered in the loan file in Encompass Consumer Connect.
There it is.
Hey, they thought of that too.
See, I told you I hate reading. So there it is. Thanks,
right. I'll do the reading for you. You do the talking and the big stuff. This one to me, right? I mean, this is milestone completion or FDE rule, perhaps as well. Knowing what we know about authorized VOE or credit, it follows in the same thing.
I would be worried about conditioning. In other words, if we've got a VOI or VOA in there, I'd want to make sure we have their authorization on file.
Yep.
How did they authorize it? Another reason to use Consumer Connect, which I know probably a bunch of people just groaned that we can't hear. But if you haven't used Consumer Connect in a while, I still find it's the most cost-effective way to do business. You don't have to use it for everything, but the ability to use it for something like this in workflow is becoming more obvious to some. Okay, so we've got, we're on page 37 to 70. We're doing good on time here. New option to omit or include leap year when calculating. I just literally went through this with a client. Where are we in May now? So this month, where if you've got leap years, they obviously have 366 days. So check with your policy on this. If you've never had to deal with leap year calculations on HELOCs, congrats. But in leap years, it does get wonky. We've got a leap year coming up. So early birthday, congrats to leap year babies. But when it comes to HELOCs, they're a pain in the butt. And if you choose to omit this, I would strongly encourage you, obviously, under HELOC management in here, because this is on your data template. Make sure that you update your data templates. It's good shout out to good old fashioned data templates that we probably haven't been in quite some time. In addition, you can do and update settings, loan templates, loan programs. Oh, loan programs, looks like they're sticking it in loan programs, not data templates. So I guess you could put it in loan program if it's specific to HELOC. So yes, I could see you doing this way also. Like anything in Encompass, you can get to the bottom a couple different ways. So they're calling out using loan programs. If you're a heavy data template company, maybe you look at that as well. Arthur, we've got new rescission detail fields added to the Reg Z CD input form. People rescind? Have you ever had a client rescind, Arthur?
No, and this is something we learned from, say, loan officer school, or it's a CFPB rule. If you fail to provide the correct disclosures of their right to rescind, the lender, or there's a few different conditions, but that right to rescind can go on for 3 years. So
Yeah,
I
it
think that
does.
this update goes, hey, not just did they, exercise the right, but now we're capturing, the full disposition of it. I've never came across someone. I think financial emergency is a good one, perhaps deployment or something to that effect.
Oh,
But
you
I've
mean
never
to
come across.
avoid? You mean to avoid rescission?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, I was asking if you ever worked with a file where a borrower actually rescinded.
No, no, I have not either
So,
under those
so I
scenarios.
have, and I bring this up because it's usually because the borrower wants all their money back. And so, again, every state's different. I live in New Jersey, which is, if not one of the most litigious states in the country. And so what borrowers will do if they're educated, they'll go through the whole transaction, even if they know they're not going to close, just to rescind after closing so they can get all their money back. How you like them apples, being a lender in Jersey? So that's what I see here is, and I know companies have actually built custom rescission detail, custom input forms. So now we've got actually new fields to talking about if there is a rescission waive, to your point, Arthur. Like you said, we've got under very specific federal guidelines, can you actually waive your own rescission? One of them is, going to jail, and going into foreclosure, going to sheriff's sale, things like that, where you need to waive that rescission to get the money right away. So this gives you the ability to document that. Does it say what input form it's on? Oh,
You piqued my curiosity, and we have one in the chat. Yeah, Matthew says I've had people rescind a loan. Their motivation, is to get their money back. Can you clarify that? If they paid for something related to the loan, or
Melissa, this is being recorded. To answer your chat, that was a private chat to me, and then yeah. So again, I can only speak to Jersey, but yeah, in Jersey, if as a borrower, the rules were always, and again, if this is not current, forgive me, but my 20 years of experience of retail lending, if a borrower is like, dude, I'm going to cancel, I want my money back, and you're like, yeah, you can cancel, but you're not getting your money back. And so what some attorneys will advise their clients is go through, at least in Jersey, they used to. They say go through closing and then rescind, and the lender has to give you all your money back, including the appraisal fee.
The appraisal fee, yeah, gotcha. Okay, so money that they put into that
Yeah,
loan.
Matt.
That
Yeah,
makes
so
sense. Yeah.
Matt just says Matt. Yeah,
Yep.
Matt's like, yeah, because Matt's a big time lender in Jersey, so he knows
There you go.
it. Sorry, Matt.
What not to do. Thanks for answering that. You piqued my curiosity. I needed to
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, where was I? Page 40. New fields added for DC security. So if you are security affidavit in Virginia, so if you're doing business in District of Columbia, yeah, Matt's right. It's like 1 out of a million. I think it's 1 out of a million, maybe. So if you're doing business in District of Columbia or in the state of Virginia, you've got some new information. So this is one of those things where a lot of companies don't leverage the state-specific input forms from Encompass to get to either putting on a custom input form so people don't forget to go there, because nobody goes to the state-specific information input form. It's just too fine of a line to get to, or they didn't even know it was there. So I do want to bring up something while we're on this topic. I do want to bring up let's bring this up over here and go to my C drive. So on the C drive, when we've got the folders in here, we come over into Smart Client Cache. We come over into Apps, come over into UAC, Ellie Mae, your hash folder. Yours will be different. Come into 360, go into Documents, go into Forms. And there you'll see all of the input forms that you might not see in your native Encompass. So in the input form. So this is where you can find all kinds of forms that are loaded when you first log into Encompass. If your desktop client doesn't sense any changes, it won't update your hash. But this is where you can get into all of your state-specific, over here, state-specific forms. So in this particular case, we had Virginia and DC. So you can go into DC or you can go into Virginia and pull out stuff that you want if you want to put that on a custom input form. So I always point that out because I don't think a lot of people know that path to it. So there it is. So cover that. That's on page 40. Get familiar with these fields and these updates if you're doing those loans in those states. And that's for Virginia on that screen for page 41. Here's the update to the state-specific disclosure information input form for DC. That's on page 42. You've got enhancements to the user workflow after importing DU findings on the conditions tab in the E folder. So if you're one of the companies that actually imports DU findings, there was a warning message presented. That warning message has been updated. So if you kind of tried it and then you didn't like the experience, I'd encourage you to go back and try it again after 23.2 drops if you're importing DU findings. I don't find too many companies doing this. Do you, Arthur?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's just they don't like the language. They want to use their conditions. I find if I do find this, is typically in the preliminary conditions, where they want to import the processor or the sales rep wants to import the AUS findings, DU or LP, into the preliminary conditions. What's interesting here is if you look right here, they're using advanced conditions in here. They're not using standard conditions. So I don't know if that is meaningful in the screenshot, but that's what they're showing you there. So here's just an example. I'm on page 44. That's probably kind of really small to read, but that's where I'm at. Users can select the option to not display this pop-up ever again in the future. I don't know if that's a good thing because I don't know how to reset that message for somebody if you change your mind. But if this screenshot looks weird to you because you're used to seeing preliminary underwriting post-closing, this is advanced conditions. So if you're not familiar with advanced conditions, I would encourage you to start to explore advanced conditions because they are they're good to explore. Put it that way. They're good to start to understand if you don't understand them. All right, so the next one here on page 44 is the ability to enter any day of the month for paid to date and first payment from the purchase advice form. So if you're buying loans and you're on the you're filling out your correspondent purchase advice forms, you get to change your paid to and first payment to anything you want, which is good, as long as it doesn't violate the rules of Encompass that are listed out below. This is on page 45. So if you're doing correspondent loans and you had some struggles with how long that loan was paid to, so again, if you're buying a loan as a correspondent, you could buy it any day of the month. And that first payment due could be any day of the month, especially if it's from like a non-standardized closing, theoretically. So page 44 and 45 will cover that setting. Check that out. There is so in the Encompass settings, there's a new option to enable MFA or multi-factor authentication for the Consumer Connect portal. So if your company has been asking for MFA for the Consumer Connect admin side, so in other words, getting to your admin, if you want to MFA that because of your company's security policies in 23.2, this is now a possibility. So you'd want to go back into admin tools. This is where you're going to find this. And you're going to go to Settings Manager, go to the password category list, and you're going to enable MFA. And in the MFA option, which today only shows for Connect products, you now have Connect Admin Portal. So this is good. I think this could be good, especially if you've got somebody who is helping you update or support your Consumer Connect portal, and you want to MFA that experience because they're not going into Encompass or they're not going into other Connect products. So that's pretty cool. I can see that. Somebody must have asked for that. And if you're not using MFA, that's where you'd find it. So again, one of those things to double check, security is everything. And if your company requires MFA policies, you should definitely explore that. Talking about personas, this is a cool ad. So if you're working with personas for some time now, we've had a Consumer Connect tab, and typically you only had two checkboxes, one for web admin, one for web content. You now have web assistant. So I know in the Idea Center, and I know this because I've seen it on there a million times. Hey, we want somebody to be able to go search for borrowers and reset passwords when they're not a web admin. So with the new web assistant option, additional users can now log into the portal and assist loan officers with incomplete applications or borrower lookups. Big deal. That's a really big deal. So web assistant, I think, was going to help out a ton of companies. I think it's going to be a ton of companies. Web assistants can be further managed limited by administrators in the Consumer Connect admin portal. This is page 47. Guys, read into this, check it out, obviously test it, make sure you're okay with it before you deploy it out to a bunch of your personas. But I can see that being very, very useful for a lot of people. So thank you, ICE. Next feature enhancement, update to the persona access options for AIQ or AIQ analyzer. So if you're using AIQ, this would be helpful for you where you can update in the personas under the AIQ tab. What can the user do with AIQ? That's on page 48. So check that out if you're using AIQ. And on page 49, we've got a new residential mortgage lender license type for North Dakota. So North Dakota must have updated their bill, which they did. Senate Bill 2090, which requires residential mortgage lenders to obtain a residential mortgage lender's license. Seems reasonable. So hey, listen, I'm going to call out something really important. Obviously, if you're there's three places to keep your licensing up to date, just as a reminder. First place is going to be in your company's information settings. The next place is going to be in the appropriate organization/user, aka organizational hierarchy loan folder. Not loan folder, organizational folder. If you have everything relying on parent, then you can just worry about your top level folder. If you're not relying on parent, keep in mind that each of these licensing types are in each of the organizational's folder. That's the second place. The third place is compliance review setup. So this is calling out the individual users. This is calling out the organization. This is calling out, the company and the individual users. This is calling out the compliance review setup, aka Maven. So company information, organization/users, and Maven, those are the three typical. If you're working in TPO, you need to make sure you go back, if you've got any TPO clients that have North Dakota licensing, that you update their information in the external company setup, assuming that that's something you're tracking, which I hope you are. If you're not doing it there and you're doing it in Comergence or something like that, keep in mind that if you've got the settings set up for the company within the licensing tab and you don't allow them to create a loan unless the licensing matches, you've got to update their licensing. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to give you North Dakota loans. So here's where it shows, which one is this? Where are we at here? Company information. Oh, we're in the company user setup. Information up here. That's just a screenshot for that. All right, there is a warning. When setting a warning when setting close without saving added to normalize. So if you're using, this is all correspondent stuff. So if you're using a normalized bid tape template and configurable workflow settings. So for those of you that are taking in bid tapes on correspondent channel and you're using configurable workflow templates, a new warning's been added. So make sure you review this. This is on the bottom of page 50. And these, again, more feature enhancements. We're on page 51. So that's the warning message in there. You've got a trade tolerance violation added to the SMOS and the Encompass SDK. So if you're dealing with any type of tolerance control, you now have this option field in the Encompass settings. Again, talking about correspondent trades. I don't think Encompass gets enough love when it comes to non-retail business. Encompass is really pushing in hard on companies getting involved with non-retail. So if you're listening to this and you wondered if Encompass can support your business for correspondent, the answer is yes. It's been yes for a while, but it just goes to show they continue to enhance the workflow for your non-retail business. So there's an example under the commitments tab. This is, by the way, what you're looking at here, if you've never seen it, this is in the external company setup of the actual TPO client. So you get to define the commitments under the commitments tab. You get to define the policy for best efforts tolerance. Basically, if we say, listen, we're going to buy $1 million, but they only send you 800,000, is that tolerance okay? And then you can decide what you want to do. So that's at the bottom of page 52. More feature enhancements for EDM. You've got some additional branding updates. So now it just uses the ice.com. This would be important if clients have to white label specific IP domains, or URL domains. Make sure your clients are okay receiving stuff from ice.com. Could be an issue, possibly. You've got new consent agreement language with Encompass Consumer Connect loans. So there's an update to that language. I would encourage you to review that after this drops. If you have a tight legal department or compliance department on how to deal with that, make sure you review that language and that they understand what the language is. For those that didn't have a problem with 23.1, it was a really quick problem. I experienced it, and basically the e-folder was breaking if you clicked it too many times very fast, which none of our users do, right? It would break the e-folder because of this file separator. This is really cool. So we found a problem. I was actually one of the people affected, and they got it removed for us in a hot fix. But check this out. So what happens is, you ever been into a document has multiple files? And so what it will show now in the viewer, I'll actually put this little separator, and it puts the file name in between the different files within the main thumbnail view. So in English, if you had 3 files in one document, you now can actually see the file separator if you select all 3 files in the same document. Extraordinarily helpful for underwriters when they're looking at documents that are tied to the condition when they go to review. How many times have we had to do something so the underwriter can see which one they want to see, and you kind of fool with the file order? This will actually give them that visualized separator in the document. So check it out. It's not only in the documents but also in the file manager. This is super cool. If you've not seen it before, it actually is very, very helpful. So hopefully it goes well. So here's an example of that on screen. And so when you select them, you can kind of see what, sorry, let me go back a second. Current file indicator, because I gave you 2 at once. File separators is the thing I was carrying on about. Current file indicator. Remember, current file means that if you open up the document and you check the box for the file, what it means to Encompass is that file is the only one that's going to be displayed as received in the document, and it's the only file that's going to be sent when you send files or you do an export template. So the idea here is that the current file indicator, when you look in the file manager, you can see which one of these is marked as current. That's what it's talking about in the indicator. It gives you that little left caret. So check that out. There's an enhancement to the search box and the new document viewer. If you're not using the new document viewer, this is going to make no sense to you. We're on page 56. If you are using the new document viewer, check out the little magnifying glass. So now you can actually search for important items in there. You've got a zoom feature updated. This is really cool. So you can actually do Control plus or Control minus if you like a keyboard thing, or you can do a mouse scroll wheel or a laptop touchpad. I feel like this is getting into like web stuff, or like they're planning for the web.
Yep.
All right. So we've got about 11 minutes left, and we're going to go into fixed issues. Again, this major release is only 70 pages. There was a ton of stuff in enhancements. Make sure you go through that. Now for the fixed issues, we've got only a few things to go through. What happened to my mouse? There it is. First fixed issue is hidden underwriter contact field removed from closing cost template. So if you had a ticket open for hidden underwriter contact field, I haven't seen this one. So that's been resolved. This issue has been addressed and the hidden fields have been removed from the because it's a 2010 data template. That's why I'm not dealing with 2010 data templates. So if you are and you have this problem, it is gone. Correction to the name of the VA property certificate. So if you didn't, the VA certification print form now shows as VA lender and veteran property. It had vendor before, so that's just a typo. I'm a victim of that all the time. So thank you, ICE, for fixing that. And that's where it shows. It showed property right there. The veteran is now fixed. Cool. Updated calculation for payoffs dispersed on behalf of borrowers. So there was a problem when you were using I guess there was a problem in the calculation of the payoff. So previously the calculations were populated excluding that. So if you had problems with your payoffs for both standard and alternate disclosures, for the payoffs excluding mortgages or paid on behalf, that's been resolved. I haven't heard that one either. So I feel lucky, like some of these problems aren't affecting me. Employer name now displays when printing 10 or more VOEs. Holy goodness. That's a threshold issue. I built out an input form where it took basically the VOM section and I put it into a custom input form and I put it out 12 properties wide and I mapped all the fields. And I'm like, no one will have more than 12. I got an application in that had the guy had 44 properties. I'm like, yeah, no, I can't support that. So I feel like that's something here where it's like, who's going to have more than 10 employers? But It's a gig economy, right? That's possible. MI premium rounded disabled for refi loans. So we had an issue where non-refi loans, but they were not using. Okay, so basically we had a 2010 a 2010 file using a 2020 1003 tied in with the MIP refund. So that's been issued. So I guess if you're doing a HELOC, I guess a HELOC's the only one using a 2010, unless you're a company not securitizing and you don't need to worry about using a 2015 LE because you want to use the HUD and the good faith TIL and HUD. I guess that would be the only reason why you do that. Title insurance company info populates to file contacts from business contacts for 2010 forms. There must have been a lot of companies using the 2010 itemization, because there's a lot of fixes in here for that.
Just for HELOC has been my experience.
Yeah, right. That's been my experience too. But a HELOC, you're not using an LE, so I don't know. Just helping somebody not too long ago where we got into that whole conversation. Next one that's been fixed is non-borrower buy-down subsidies and buy-down adjustments. Buy-downs. I feel like I've been talking about buy-downs for a year now. So there was an issue that's resolved where buy-down loans caused the buy-down subsidy amount to not populate. What? They fixed this? Oh, I can't wait for this. Oh, this is awesome. So, all right. So I'm kind of geeking out here, but I had to, so basically you have to I have a whole thing where you had to build out a new workflow, because the buy down subsidy doesn't go into the interim servicing, which means the first payment letter doesn't show the proper amounts that are due from the borrower. I still don't know if this is going to solve the big problem, because I had to create a custom input form and a custom print form and a custom first payment letter. So I don't know if this is going to fix it, because it doesn't talk about all that, but it does talk about the start servicing in this CASA RN.X141, which is important because the contributor drop-down list, something other than borrower, that's what we usually do. Usually it's seller in this field for buy downs. So I'll have to test that out. We'll have to talk about that as a community. Maybe we'll talk about that in our June admin workshop. Some stuff for HELOCs getting fixed. We're on page 62. Creating a VOL for a loan without an associated HELOC no longer populates the HELOC. Okay. So it looks like there was an issue there that got resolved. Looks like LPA was having a problem with it. So it looks like ICE fixed Encompass to allow that to go through without any problems. So if you're having that issue with HELOC draw total, hopefully that fixes you. Loan template issues fixed. We had a co-borrower, non-spousal, and domestic relation fields copy from loan so you had loan duplication. So if you're using loan duplication templates and you had an issue with these two fields, that's been resolved. Two fields are populating correctly. E-close. For those that are doing e-close, there's been a fix to the cash to close amount on CD, now calculating correctly when generating documents with Encompass e-close. It's cool that they fixed that. The issue has been resolved for Encompass e-close, and the 1 month cushion for MI is no longer applied. Oh, I can see that happening. What they did was they were probably scooping up the 1 month, and it was throwing off the cash to close. That would have been annoying. ATRQM fix. Sorry guys. ATRQM fix. Price limit test now fails when the threshold is equal to. Oh, Arthur, this is like a coding thing, right? So it wasn't failing when the ATR price limit equaled the limit, only when it exceeded.
Yeah.
So now,
greater than or equal to. Yeah. Are you talking about precision, like in LTV or something like that, kind of related to it? Going to the second decimal? Yeah, 0.01.
Yeah.
Needed an equal sign in there, sure.
Just got one equal sign. So there you go. So now you'll fail if the price limit actually equals the limit, because that's the limit. All right. Anyway.
Makes sense. I love when one character fixes something that could be a real pain,
Yeah. And you love the person who finds it and they're like, dude, you're just missing an equal sign right there. Like,
Yeah.
just do that.
Yep.
Page 64, Encompass homepage. We've got a fix to the loans in my pipeline homepage module. I know that there's companies using the homepage module. I just don't get it. Like, this is a pipeline view. I don't, and the fact that they still have CBS Market Watch, come on, ICE. Stop. Don't promote this. Don't put stuff on your homepage. My opinion, don't put stuff on your homepage besides admin whiteboard. Everything else you can find in your pipeline view, including recently opened loans, including things like loans in my pipeline. This all takes time and speed to load. Like, I want to make my Encompass quicker. Only load what I need, not extra stuff. If you want to go see CBS Market Watch, open up one of your 20 tabs on Chrome, like Art.
20 is a start.
20 is a minimum. That's just a buy-in.
You don't like the recently viewed loans either, huh?
No, you
You
go to
got
the
a pipeline
pipeline
view for that.
tab. Just
Yep.
go to the pipeline
Yep.
tab. I mean, I don't know. Just me. Business rule fixes, access to the use GFE tax checkbox now be controlled. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So if you've never had to actually limit this checkbox because people kept checking it when they weren't supposed to, you can now control that with a percent of access to fields business rule. That could be helpful. So if that was on your list of annoying things or things that needed to get done, get that done with 23.2. Loan file imports. If you're used to importing, an issue was resolved that resulted in the option to import from a MISMO 3.4 is not displaying unless they had both options selected. So now you can give somebody the option to do this just with the ULAD or ILAD MISMO 3.4. So that issue's been resolved in the persona level. That was page 66. Page 67 is, so now we're on the pipeline tab again under the import. They moved the option. So under the loan tab under manage borrowers, you can import for a managed borrower, not to be confused with the pipeline tab, where when you import loans, you now have the Fannie Mae 3.x. So if that's something that's important to you, that's now in the pipeline tab under import loans. Previously, unless both of these options, it would not display. So now they've switched the location to separate the experience to make Encompass do what we want it to do. That's clever. Page 68. Oh, it just goes in more illustrations of the same thing. So now you can see how it works. That's on page 68 for that screenshot. Last one is page 69, the settings sync tool. If you guys never heard my soapbox speech on the settings sync tool, I'll save you. Just be careful with this, please. It has been known to corrupt destination environments. That's my story. I'm sticking with it. Be careful with it. But now, if you were getting an application error when you tried to use the settings sync tool to import conditions, standard conditions from one Encompass environment to the other, it's been addressed and identified. And again, these are standard Encompass settings, right? So we're not talking about enhanced conditions. We're just talking about standard conditions. So that has been resolved. So if you had some issues before, should be okay now. And then last page is the release notes, which is how we started. Arthur, do you believe we did that in an hour?
Yeah, that's great. Right to it, 2 minutes. When's so June 10th is my date, and how do I get my hands on it? Remind
June 10th,
everybody. Yep.
Yeah, June 10th. You're asking so many questions, Art. Jeez, oh man.
I'm out of questions here. I got some answers.
So get over to your release notes. Get over into 23.2. That gives you your estimated date right now for release. Pop in there the banker version, PDF version, or follow along on the web, how they do here. Is that cool?
That's it.
And then make sure that you're actually creating a task list for yourself, making sure you are identifying the things that you want to make sure get done, or that you assign to somebody else in your company to get you the information back so you can get it done. And hang out over on mortgage.community. We're going to be doing we're always talking about these kinds of things when they drop. And coincidentally, The next time we have a meetup is right around there in June. So for the next virtual Encompass admin workshop, you can always register for that by going over to workflowpartners.org, going over into workshops, virtual Encompass admins, and coming down. Here's our release party, and then coming down over into that sucks. It's not even on there. It'll be up here soon. So come here soon, and we'll go over it. But it's in the beginning of June. So we'll keep you updated. That's all I got. Are there any final thoughts?
No, that's it. Thank you very much for going through that.
That's all we got for today. Short of people not being able to get in, it's my fault for sending the link to here instead of sending them to LinkedIn or something else. But we'll learn. We'll learn. Arthur, thanks for being a part of this. And
Hey,
next
thanks for
time,
having me.
I want you to get more feedback. You're very quiet.
That's good. I have to keep us to an hour, you know?
That's true.
Or try to, I should say. Not me, you. Yeah, thank you very much.
Everybody have a great day. Thanks for joining. We'll see you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.